tons. So we can't actually imagine the impact. There are several studies which have shown that a major share of agrochemicals applied in farms are not reaching the target, especially pesticides or plant protection chemicals. But these huge amount of chemicals are actually entering to the environment, contaminating soil, water, air, and broadly the environmental ecosystem upon which the life on Earth is based. And these chemicals thus manipulate the ecosystem and its functioning in many ways, and contributing to adverse effect on food, human health, and ecological systems. And this is what we are going to discuss today. Yeah, Dr. Reddy.
Yeah. So you are introducing the subject, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. No, I thought, okay, fine. Sorry, continue.
Okay. I thought you joined a bit late. Sorry.
No, fine. I joined as a participant and I could not even communicate.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. So, the knowledge of adverse effects caused by agrochemicals since a few decades have paved way to several global policies, conventions, and treaties to regulate their production usage and monitor their impact. And with related to climate change, a lot of discussion have been happening since last 2 decades, and the global discussion and negotiations are framed under the United Nations Climate Change Conference. And these discussions, however, addresses several topics and issues, but it largely ignores agrochemicals, which is a major sector that significantly contributes to global warming and climate change. And I think today's webinar is intended to address this gap and problems related to agrochemicals in the context of climate change. I would like to share my presentation. So is it already enabled? Yeah. Allow me a few seconds. Can you see the screen now with my PPT? Hello? I hope so. Okay. So I'm mainly going to present the issues of plant protection chemicals, which is generally we know like insecticides, fungicides, herbicides, and plant regulators. Broadly, these four categories of products are known as pesticides, and insecticides are actually used to kill insect pests in the farms. Not only on farms, but it is also used to kill insects in homes, in industrial settings, and all. And fungicides are generally used to kill fungus that cause diseases to plants, and herbicide, which is otherwise known as weedicides, is widely used to kill the vegetation, which is in the farming sector is known as weeds. But generally, it is killing the vegetation, and the plant growth regulators are generally used to boost growth or to regulate the growth of plants. And nowadays, we see that the usage of herbicide has been increasing drastically, and owing to several reasons like a shortage of labor or labor cost increase. So many things are discussed on this front, but anyway, we see a highest usage is happening, which is basically the herbicides. And earlier it was insecticide, but nowadays it is herbicides. Coming to the pesticide consumption, as I already said, a huge amount of agrochemicals used in farming across the globe and in India. The recent data shows that about 60,000 metric tons of pesticide active ingredients are used in our farmlands in India. And this is the technical grade uh, products, which is the concentrated product. But if you look at the larger figure, with the formulated products available in market, this 60,000 metric tons will be much higher when it comes to the market, which includes so many other ingredients which are known as inert ingredients, which are also toxic to ourselves. And the global usage will be much higher or many folds higher than the Indian figure. And India is the, I think, the fourth largest user of pesticide. And globally, almost all the countries use huge amount of pesticides, so the figure will be much higher in a global scenario. And if we look at the global regulatory framework for pesticides, one major treaty is the Stockholm Convention, which is a global treaty that aims to protect human health and the environment from effects of chemicals known as persistent organic pollutants. And some pesticides, among other chemicals, are regulated or banned globally under this convention. And a classical example is endosulfan, which was globally phased out in 2011 after huge severe health effects have been recorded across the globe, including in India. And the other global treaty is Rotterdam Convention, which is actually designed to facilitate informed decision making by countries with regard to trade in hazardous chemicals, including pesticides. And this mandates a prior informed consent process for export and import of hazardous pesticides. The third one is a voluntary code of conduct, which is known as the International Code of Conduct on Pesticides Management. And this gives guidelines on life cycle management of chemicals used as pesticides, fungicides, weedicides, and plant growth regulators. So this voluntary code actually, which is agreed by industry and governments, is a major development in the past decade with related to the regulation and use of pesticides. And as I said during the introduction, a lot of discussion is happening related to climate change, and the global discussions are happening under the framework of United Nations Climate Change Conference. And this discussion, it discussed several topics related to sustainability, decarbonization, industry participation, managing the energy sector and all. However, it obviously ignores agrochemicals, which is a major sector that significantly contributes to global warming and climate change. And now I would like to share a couple of things related to why this climate change negotiation should include pesticides or generally agrochemicals. One important factor is that pesticides are inherently toxic substances. If you look at the bottle or container of pesticides available in the market, you can see either of the four colors like red, yellow, blue, and green on their packet or on their containers, which indicate acute toxicity of pesticides. The red one is extremely or highly acutely toxic one, and the green one is the less toxic one. And of course, this acute toxicity is a major factor that decides the effect in an exposed individual, especially in the case of occupational poisoning, where farmers or farm workers or community nearby farming area can be exposed to pesticides directly through inhalation and contact poisoning. So a study, a recently published study, this study has published in 2020. And this study shows that a dramatic rise in global pesticide poisoning, and it estimates that about 44% of global population working on farms, which is about 860 million farmers and agricultural workers, are poisoned every year through contact poisoning or through inhalational poisoning. The total fatalities around the world from unintended pesticide poisoning are estimated at around 11,000 deaths per year, and nearly 60% of which occur in just one country in India, indicating serious problems of pesticide usage happening in our country. And as I said, pesticides are toxic and poisons, and this slide shows the chronic toxic effect of pesticides. Of course, acute effects are mentioned, but you see immunotoxicity and respiratory system effect, hormone disruption, reproductive impacts, developmental toxicity, carcinogenicity, neurotoxicity, etc. So a number of chronic health effects are recorded for many pesticides currently being used, and this chronic toxicity aspect has not been considered in the global regulation at some level, because the global pesticide regulation is basically developed around the acute toxicity classification of pesticides developed by World Health Organization. Of course, some institutions such as the International Agency on Cancer Research, which is actually doing some work on assessing the carcinogenicity of chemicals and substances, has actually working on this. And I think in 2015, a remarkable decision came, which was related to carcinogenicity of a widely used weedicide, glyphosate. And in 2020, it published information that glyphosate is actually a possible human carcinogen. So in that way, several agencies are working, especially European countries and in American countries. Some good research is happening, which actually bring out the chronic toxicity of pesticides. Now, pesticides are being hazardous substances and poisons. Usage of pesticides require wearing safety equipments or personal protective equipments. And the international guideline, as I said, the International Code of Control on Pesticides Management clearly mentioned that pesticide use should accompany comprehensive personal protective equipments, and farmers and workers should have access to all these personal protective equipments as the image shows. You should have a protection for head, protection for face, protection for hands, protection for head, leg, protection for the entire body. However, the use of personal protective equipment which is suitable for the task to be carried out appropriate to the prevailing climatic condition and should be affordable is a provision from the Code of Control on Pesticide Management, which is one major thing related to the climate change. And let us have a look at the suggested safety measures in India. So the insecticide rules 1971 clearly mentioned the required protective clothing while working with pesticides, and Rule 39 and Rule 40 clearly mentions this. I'm not getting into detail, just showing this. And if you look at the pesticide labels, you can also get information, and sometimes the label mentions wear protective clothing, or sometimes it mentions wear full protective clothing, but it does not give information on what are the actual or the full protective clothing required. And another international guideline that look at personal protection of while working with pesticide is the International Code of Control on Pesticides Management special guideline for personal protection when handling and applying pesticides. This document gives a detailed account on the required personal protective equipment while handling pesticides. And this international code of conduct have some provisions. For example, the article provision 3.6 state that pesticide whose handling and application require the use of personal protective equipment that is uncomfortable, expensive, or not readily available should be avoided, especially in the case of small scale users and farm workers in hot climate. And actually, if you look at the farming sector or farmers or farm workers working in farms in India, we can we can understand that none of the farmers or workers are using personal protective equipment. One major problem is the tropical climate doesn't allow wearing personal protective equipments because it causes suffocation. Farmers or workers who are wearing such equipments will become tired. They may not be able to continue the work in a hot climate and all. So all these issues are there, and literally farmers and workers cannot use suggested personal protective equipment because of the tropical climate. Of course, the temperature and humidity is a major factor. And in that case, the article provision 5.2.5 states that the sale of such products need to be halted as soon as possible when handling or use of such pesticide pose an unacceptable risk under any use directions or restrictions, and it needs to be notified by the government. And this is not happening. And in 2017, we were actually shocked by a news came from Yavatmal district in Maharashtra that farmers and farm workers have been poisoned while they were spraying in the cotton fields. And this series of incident actually resulted in the death of 20 farmers or farm workers, and it left thousands of farmers and farm workers poisoned. Many of them are still suffering with the poison effects. And the state government then appointed a special investigation team. And one of the major finding of this special investigation team was that farmers or workers they were not using personal protective equipment. So this was a kind of blame on farming community, but farming community are unable to wear personal protective equipment because of high temperature and high humidity. That is one factor. And another factor is that the required personal protective equipment and which is of good quality is not available. Now coming to the exposure scenario, farmers and farm workers are directly exposed to pesticides while mixing, while loading, while spraying. And the farmers or farm workers who are accompanying the spraying person in the field, or farming community living close to the agriculture field, are also exposed to pesticides. Literally, all the sectors in the population, including women, children, elder, everywhere affected by or exposed to pesticides. And consumers are also affected by pesticides through contamination of food and water. So this is a major issue which is I think in general discussions this issue has not been discussed, because everybody believe that it's only farmers and farm workers are exposed, but actually the each and every sector in the population and at all ages are exposed to pesticides. Obviously, direct exposure is happening for farming community, and indirect exposure is happening to all other communities. Initially, these are the signs of poisoning. Once someone is exposed to pesticides, headache, blood division, nausea, vomiting. So all these are there, and many of these symptoms are common among farming communities. Food poisoning can also shows some kind of or some of these symptoms. And one major point which is related to exposure of pesticides to children and adolescent girls or boys, that many of the pesticides are reproductive toxins and endocrine disrupting chemicals. So these chemicals can affect their growth and development, especially reproductive development. Sometimes in among agriculture communities, early reproductive development has been recorded, and reduced sperm counts has been recorded among adults. Reduced fertility is there, infertility has been recorded, and alterations in menstrual cycle has been recorded among adolescent girls. Miscarriages has been recorded among young women, and complications during delivery, and endometriosis has also been recorded among women. So this is the data from the Center for Disease Control in the US. This data shows that developmental disabilities has been increased between the age of 3 and 17. 17% of increase has been recorded between 1997 and 2008. In 1997 and 2006, during this period, 3% increase every year has been recorded for the disease attention deficit hyperactivity syndrome or ADHD. This is also recorded for children and teenagers. Autism has been recorded who have an increase of 78% at the age of 8 between the year 2002 and 2008. Childhood cancers has been increased by 25 percentage. Diabetes has been increased by 53 percentage. Obesity has been increased by 171 percentage. So if you look at the period from 1975 to 2011, significant increase among these consolidated sectors has been noted, and the study did not attribute all these issues to pesticides, but they says that pesticides can also be a major factor for all these issues. Now look at the pesticide poisoning in Maharashtra states in India, because Maharashtra states consumes highest amount of chemical pesticides in the last 5 years. The occupational pesticide poisoning cases has been recorded with 18,108 cases with 809 casualties for the period between 2011 and 2008. During 2017 and 18, 2,787 cases of occupational poisoning with 63 casualties has been recorded in the state. And due to this poisoning cases, especially due to the series of pesticide poisoning happened in 2017, government of Maharashtra ordered a 6-month prohibition for 5 pesticides, which include monocrotophos and acephate, which are organophosphate groups of pesticides. Now, if you look at pesticide poisoning in India, based on the National Crime Records Bureau's data, it shows that a total of 441,918 pesticide suicide has been reported in India for the period between 1995 and 2015, with an annual average of 22,095 cases. The National Crime Records Bureau reports that death due to accidental intake of insecticides or pesticides in 2015 in India was 7,672. If you look at this pie chart, you can see the name of pesticides that has contributed to the cumulative poisoning due to pesticides, and this data is based on a World Health Organization's publication from 2009. So monocrotophos, chlorpyrifos, quinalphos, triazophos, malathion, acephate, entrin, methylparathion. So many pesticides are named here. I'm not getting into details. The point is that a number of pesticides are actually implicated in death of people in India. Not only in India, globally it is also happening. Another major problem why pesticide is a kind of major issue is that many pesticides do not have antidotes. If someone is poisoned or someone accidentally drank some pesticide, if it has an antidote, sometimes the person can be saved, but a large number of pesticides registered in India do not have specific antidotes, and the Maharashtra Special Investigation Team report on pesticide poisoning in 2017 reported that poisoning with pesticides that do not have antidotes leaves less chances of giving a proper treatment, which means that we cannot save the person or the individual who has consumed or who has affected by pesticides through inhalation or contact poisoning. This is a very important factor. Studies have shown that 99% of pesticides applied are wasted. Wasted means only less than 0.1% of the pesticide applied to crops are actually reaching the target pest, with the rest finding its way to the soil, air, and water. This has been recorded in 1986, and recently in 2016, there's a study from India which shows that only 1% of the applied pesticides strike the target, which means that nearly 99% of the pesticides applied in the farming sector has been actually going to pollute soil, air, and water, where we derive our health. So let us discuss another issue of weedicide usage. Actually, I already mentioned that weedicide usage has been rampant in India, and not only in India, across the globe. And huge use is happening across farming sector and non-farming sector as well. If you look at villages or even in cities, you can see that weedicide application is happening around the buildings, near to the schools or in playgrounds. Everywhere it is happening, and thus highest amount of weedicides are applied in across the sector. One study shows that earthworms are excellent indicators of soil health, and it provide vitally important ecosystem services by aerating the soil, cycling nutrients, and increasing soil fertility and microbial activity. And a recent study shows that glyphosate-based herbicides reduce the activity and reproduction of earthworms, means that herbicide application lead to increased soil concentration of contaminants. That is one factor. The other factor is it is killing biodiversity in soils. Not only weedicides, but generally all pesticides do the same thing. Killing of biodiversity is happening, which contributes to biodiversity decline among the ecosystem. So generally, the impact of agrochemical inputs can be seen as these major issues such as fragile soil ecosystem has been distressed, hindering the nutrient recycling process, which is happening naturally in the soil. It turns soil biologically less active, mean the soil become dead, and soil may not be able to support healthy crop and nutritious farm produce. And agrochemicals turn soil into a reservoir of hazardous chemicals. Of course, the same hazardous chemical get into the plants, and at the end it reaches the food, and when we eat the same food, it reaches our body. And several analysis happening in India shows that a greater proportion of food items, especially vegetables, fruits, even milk, are contaminated with chemical pesticides, and intake by plants is the major reason. Then it is also contributing surface water and groundwater, where we derive our drinking water. So we are drinking water that is contaminated with pesticides. And decline of pollinators is a major issue we see among the agriculture sector, because use of pesticides, most of the pesticides are actually contributing to decline of bees, and thus it is getting into a kind of problem where our we may not get enough or adequate produce from our farmlands. This is going to happen in near future. We may not be able to produce most of our food because the pollination may not happen at the required level. Now, coming to the soil degradation, as I said earlier, a huge amount of pesticide or major portion of the pesticide applied in the farms are actually contributing to soil pollution, air pollution, and water contamination. So in the soil, its chemistry gets altered, its physical texture is getting lost, the organic matter has been reduced water holding capacity of the soil has been noted. Soil acidification is a major issue of use of agrochemicals, including fertilizers. Then contamination of chemicals, especially heavy metals, then declining of soil biodiversity and declining soil biological activity, which means that the soil may not be able to support healthy plant growth and adequate resources required for the plant growth. And this has direct implications on food production and food security. Soil will become devoid of nutrients required for sustaining healthy plants, and it cannot support the adequate productivity that is expected from a soil. Then declining in nutrient quality is a major issue. Deteriorating nutrition quality of produce is an impact. then food contaminated with all these chemicals is a major concern for all of us. And this is I think a 2015 news report, and it shows that Madurai Vellore areas are worst hit due to indiscriminate fertilizer and pesticide use. Monocropping and the non-application of base manure has taken toll on soil fertility. The organic carbon content in some district has shown there. Some district has very lower levels, and carbon content of course is directly impacted by agrochemicals, because the soil organisms which is actually maintaining soil health, of course carbon is a major factor of humic acid and humus, will not be able to perform its activities, and thus the soil become devoid of carbon content in the soil. Not only carbon content, but all other factors such as microbial activity and all. I would like to stop here. The point is that actually climate change and temperature rise is a reality nowadays. And in this context, we know pesticides are actually inherently toxic substances, and the increase in temperature along with the humidity can affect the toxicity dynamics of pesticides. The exposure through our body can be affected, which will contribute to increased exposure to chemicals to the farmers or farm workers, because they are unable to use personal protective equipment. So this is actually happening, and this is why this global negotiations needs to address pesticides and or generally agrochemicals as a special concern in all its negotiations. But I'm not sure if the leaders has recognized the agrochemicals as a major problem. Thank you so much. Hello.
Yeah, thank you, Dilip, for that a long presentation, which has given the basics of pesticides and the impacts which these pesticides are having on biology, zoology, and life in general. So maybe we'll have a Q&A or a discussion later. Right now, I'll request Dr. Dayanand if he can speak.
Sir, good evening, sir. I
Good.
am Dr. Dayanand from Assistant Professor of Chemistry, Government City College. Here, this is the first time I am interacting with you, leaders of this COP21. Nice presentation, Dilip sir. I was very much interested. An interesting talk was done by you. Let me share my PPT. What I did is I searched the literature. From there, I am not a worker on this one. I am purely academician. Suddenly, I got this information. Later on, if any chance is given for me, I will definitely collaborate, sir. Shall I start, sir, my presentation?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, that is the climate change caused by agrochemicals. Okay, this is my presentation. Okay, I want to stress more upon the different areas. How the agrochemicals, as sir was saying, Dilip sir was just now saying that 99% of the pesticides are going wasted. Only 1% are reaching their actual target. Nowadays, we have seen even nano fertilizers are also evolving in India. Nano urea is coming. Okay, I thought that nano, it is a good boon for the society, but actually nano fertilizers also becomes a major issue again. Why? Because 99% of the wastage will not be washed out. Again, the residues will be remaining in the same area of okay, that is the residue will be remaining in the soil like that only. It is going to remain. Okay, let us see how it is going to affect the society, or the climate change is caused by this one. Okay, agrochemicals. Generally, we use agrochemicals for the usage of nitrogen, phosphorus, or potassium. Okay, they are affect soil is affected, microflora is affected, texture, productivity of the soil is affected, soil enzymatic activity is affected, environment as well as human health is also affected there. Okay, just now we had seen how human health is affected. Many diseases are coming because of these agrochemicals. They are highly toxic and they generally cause groundwater contamination also. Okay, if you see certain chemicals like DDT, it is entering even into the mother's milk also. Okay, that is a mother's milk while feeding his baby, the baby will get the DDT. Is there even in the mother's milk means how much biomagnification took place. We can observe this one. And one chemical that is benzene hexa, that is hexachlorocyclohexane. They are banned in many countries, but in India it is still in usage. In India, if you observe, the agrochemicals usage is 0.29 kgs per hectare is used, whereas in other countries it is more, but it is the wastage is more in India. That is very important. The pesticide residue is especially exceptionally high in India, that is observed. It is the second largest market in pesticides in Asia. We had seen Russia-Ukraine war also. The major issue again is about the import of urea or agrochemicals is the important area again. Okay, that is very important for the survival of the agriculture, but the excess usage is causing a major damage. Pesticides usage in different states, as Dilip sir was saying just now, that Maharashtra is the topmost state that is using agrochemicals. Okay, and Uttar Pradesh, later on Haryana and Punjab are coming into the picture. And the export is 377 or 0.76 thousand tons of agrochemicals are exported, but generally they are fungicides are exported. Okay, that is the topmost 5 pesticides in India are chlorpyro, acephate, sulfur, cypermethrin, mancozeb. These are the 5 chemicals that are used, top 5 pesticides in India that are used. Generally in India now they are in usage. Okay, what are the major impact is climate change is one of the major impact. There are environmental changes. Rise of temperature also takes place. Drought conditions are will be prevailed. Pattern of the rainfall also changes. Okay, some areas may be getting very less rainfall, and some may be getting more rainfall, directly associated with the crop loss by pests and pathogens. Okay, biology of the pathogens, everything will be changed. The diversity of pathogens will be changed completely. Okay, for pest control, we generally go for agrochemicals. Okay, but what happens? Excess usage of these agrochemicals increase the risk for beneficial insects. There are some beneficial insects are there. Okay, 1 gram of soil contains nearly 1 billion of microbes. 1 gram of soil contains 1 billion of microbes, means they are in the biomass actually is more. Okay, when compared to the other living organisms, the biomass that is present in this earth is very high, and that biomass is completely affected by this usage of these pesticides or agrochemicals. Okay, that is another area which we had to concentrate. Okay, after complete constant usage of these insecticides and fungicides, the weeds, okay, will be, that is resistance in weeds and reduction in herbicide efficiency will be taking place. As a result, the rise in temperature may increase. What happens when a pesticide is used? It had to be volatilized. It should be evaporated. Okay, that is its evaporation will be more if the temperature is very high. Okay, sometimes if the temperature is very less, it will not be evaporated. It will be resided, or residue will be remaining in the soil itself. Okay, high organochlorine pesticide, for example, was reported in Korea and USA because of warm weather. High volatilization rate of these organochemical pesticides were reported. Amount of intensity of rainfall affect the leaching of the soil takes place here. High rainfall increases soil leaching. rise in temperature could increase the rate of pesticide degradation and prevent pesticide leakage. Okay, rise in temperature because of the evaporation of the that is pesticide, the leakage will be less. But whereas it could cause drought also. Drought conditions will be there. In those conditions, drought will be prevailing. When the temperature is very high, automatically it leads to drought. Pesticides can bind to soils with the help of soil organic materials. Okay, with the help of soil organic materials, the pesticide also will be coming and fixing with that material, and it forms as a permanently it is residing there. The process of breakdown of will be increased in certain parts of the world. There may be increase in the temperature. What happens means because of breakdown of the pesticide, the next product may be still more dangerous. That is, the original pesticide may not be harmful to the microbes or biomass present in the earth, but the other area, that is the intermediate point that is formed, may be more dangerous than the other one. For example, Zycon is a pesticide where it is going to be the more dangerous. The intermediate form is more dangerous than the actual Zycon. Okay, that is agroecology and agrotoxics. Advancement of is a practical option to industrial agroecology. Monocultures, that is, they will, in Western countries, what happens when they will cultivate in 2,200 acres like that. They are called as industrial monocultures. There the agroecology will be different. They use more pesticides and fungicides and herbicides. That is more dangerous. Irregular usage of these, that is pesticides or fungicides or insecticides, will cause wildlife is also threatened, decreasing enzymatic action, increasing soil salinity. Soil salinity is increased, contamination, reduction in the population of the beneficial insects, loss of biodiversity, contamination of air and groundwater as well as surface water. Okay, we use herbicide to control the weed. Okay, herbicides, as sir was saying, that they were more in usage to decrease the labor cost. But what happens means these herbicides will go into the root zone, draining if you into the root zone, then it will be a good result. But what happens on the other, discharging of into the earth, they may be even herbicide may be discharging even to the earth also. Then it is dangerous. Okay, that is most important. Over usage of pesticides is leading to the contamination of groundwater. There are some pesticides like nitrates and phosphates, okay, or water resources, they promote algae. Okay, they promote algae. When these pesticides are drained into the river near water body, what happens there? The growth of algae will be taking place, and it leads to the eutrophication. As a result, the water body or the lake will be completely dried up because of this eutrophication. Okay, water body is completely dead because of the nitrates and phosphates when drained into the nearest water body. Over usage of different agrochemicals can decrease the population of advantageous soil microorganisms. Okay, not only the earthworms, where there are microorganisms also exist, which are going to perish completely by the usage of these pesticides. Okay, we know that agrochemicals are very easy and simple and quick and cheap solution. Okay, but they are contaminating our environment. Soil is completely lost. The nature of the soil, fertility of the soil is lost. Surface and groundwater are completely contaminated. Therefore, they are threat to the environment and non-target organisms, including soil microorganisms, plants, insects, birds, and fishes. All are completely, that is, affected by these agrochemicals. Thus, there is an urgent need for identifying and implementing alternatives to them. Okay, these are the disadvantages. Environmental pollution, just now we had discussed. There are some advantages, but the disadvantages is more. Sustainability is lost there. Okay, what are the disadvantages to the microbial community? About 10 to the power of 4 to 10 to the power of 8 microbial species exist or present in 1 gram of soil. Okay, 1 gram means 1 fist of sand. Okay, contains or soil contains this much number of microorganisms. 1 gram of soil contains approximately 1 million prokaryotic genomes. Okay, not only fist, 1 gram means a pinch of soil. Okay, small amount of soil contains that much number of the microbes or biomass is present. The microflora, algae, fungi, bacteria, protozoa, virus are associated with many fundamental functions. Okay, when you cultivate a crop, it is not only the water and the nutrients you are supplying, these microbes are also helping in increasing the yield. But what are we doing? We are using these agrochemicals and destroying those microflora. As a result, the property, the fertility of the soil is lost and the yield also will decrease gradually. Physical properties of soil includes in the structure, aeration, porosity, and water permeation are all affected by this microflora. Like our gut intestine, it contains a more amount of the bacteria. Those bacteria, useful bacteria is not only our enzymes, the enzyme that is enzymes that are released in the intestine are useful for the metabolism. Those bacteria is doing more amount of the digestion or assimilation process. But similarly in the soil also, the microflora is doing much amount of the to maintain the structure of the soil, aeration, porosity, and everything is maintained there. Water permeation, okay, are also in the this microflora or microbial communities involved in the bioremediation of soil. If there is any problem in the soil, they remediate. Okay, there is a remedy for like our liver, it can remedy auto remediation process there in liver in our body. Similar to that, the soil microbial community is helping in the bioremediation of the soil. If there is a polluted soil, slowly it removes that pollution. Okay, all these microflora are destroyed or perished. Agrochemicals that are penetrating into the soil. Okay, alterations in biomass will be taking place. 1% and 4% of soil organic matter. Biomass consists of bacteria and fungi that together comprise 1% and 4% of the soil organic matter. Okay, that is microbial biomass is a major part of this one, soil organic matter. However, large alterations will be there. By usage of these agrochemicals, there will be alterations in the bacterial and fungal diversity is lost. The ratio is not maintained. Sometimes the agrochemicals may be useful to develop or they may be used for the growth of the bacteria, which those bacteria may not be useful. And sometimes it may be used for the growth of this fungus. Therefore, the diversity, the ratio in the food chain completely is lost. Food web, we know that is completely destroyed. As a result, there is a disturbance in the soil by these agrochemicals. Bacterial dominates the cultivated, whereas fungal dominates the non-cultivated one. Okay, by usage of organic versus inorganic fertilizers, again is a problem there. Organic fertilizer generally will not destroy these microbes. Okay, they enhances the ratio of the bacterial and fungal biomass is enhanced by usage of organic fertilizers. But inorganic fertilizers generally will destroy them. Okay, reverse impact is observed in inorganic fertilization. Okay, the pH, the temperature, moisture, carbon dioxide levels are all depending on these microbes. Okay, 80% to 90% of soil functions are done mainly by these microbes or microflora. Okay, therefore, 1 gram is, as we had seen, 1 gram of soil is higher than other living organisms. Okay, there may be small planktons may be there, and some other may be there in that 1 gram of soil. But when compared to the microflora, it is very less. Sometimes, as we had seen, by the nitrates and phosphates, when drained into the fields, what happens there? Algal blooms will be developed, and they release greenhouse gases, especially oxides of nitrogen, are causing 70% of the greenhouse gases. Recently found that one. Okay, nitrogen fertilizers are the main reasons for the release of the oxides of nitrogen, which are causing greenhouse effect. And as a result of this greenhouse effect, we know that there is a increase in that terrestrial temperature or the global temperature is increased, and we know the impact of that greenhouse effect. Because nutrient imbalance will be there in the soil. Another area is soil organic carbon. Okay, this soil organic carbon is an important one, which is going to rise. Okay, it is helpful for removing the crop residue and rhizo deposition and enhancement of root turnover, boosting of microbial activity. Soil organic carbon is very important. But the diversity of soil microbes is mainly the soil organic carbon is mainly regulated by NP and nitrogen, phosphorus, and carbon. The correlation between this microbial activity, diversity, and SOC, that is soil organic carbon, indicates the health of the soil. Health of the soil is going to be determined. This is a determining factor, okay, for determining the health of the soil. If the number of microbes is higher in fertilized soils as compared to untreated soil, in fertilized soil, the number of microbes are more. Okay, in organic manure, if it is usage of organic manure instead of agrochemicals, it is more effective in increasing the number of microbes. Okay, increase in the organic carbon rather than inorganic fertilizers will decrease the number of microbes. Okay, gram negative, for example, long-term application of chemical fertilizers can adversely affect the population of gram negative bacteria that include beneficial microbes like Pseudomonas. Pseudomonas is a gram negative bacteria. Therefore, shift, as we have just now discussed, that there is a shift in the structural diversity of the different microbes. And toxic effects of pesticides and heavy metals on soil microbes were studied also. It is proved that they are going to affect, especially heavy metals and this toxic agrotoxics, it is also called as agrotoxics, will affect the soil health. Okay, then nutrient gradient is developed. Okay, why? Because just now we had discussed that there is a bacteria competition will be there. The one which gets more nutrients will survive. The other one which gets less nutrients will perish. Therefore, nutrient gradient is developed. And as a result, the diversity of the soil is completely lost. Okay, the modification of pesticides or microbes depend on number of factors, environmental factors, soil properties, like that. Okay, we had seen something. There are some interference of pesticides on microbes. Okay, the pesticides will affect the cell growth and division, molecular composition, photosynthesis, respiration, and biosynthetic reactions. Pesticides may modify the physiological and biochemical activities of soil microorganisms. Okay, the cell growth and division, cell division, molecular composition is affected by that. Some pesticides can stimulate microbe, whereas other pesticides have depressing effects. For example, the combination of 3% prosulfuron and 60% bromoxynil can induce considerable alterations in microbial populations, whereas the application of another chemicals reduced the population of actinomycetes, fungi, protozoa in soil. That is, all chemicals will be having different effects. For example, there are some chemicals, agrochemicals, metamidophos, organophosphorus pesticide, reduced fungal biomass, and total microbial biomass is completely reduced by using this agrochemical. Okay, while there is no relation between the gram negative and gram positive bacteria. Just now we had seen Pseudomonas is a gram negative bacteria, which is more useful. But these agrochemicals are eradicating that Pseudomonas. Okay, there are some denitrifying bacteria, improved culturable and denitrifying bacteria can be done by using this fungicide, Capton, but decrease nitrifying bacteria, culturable fungal population. Okay, though it is helpful, culturable and denitrifying bacteria is going to be developed, whereas other bacteria will be killed completely. Nitrifying bacteria is also required. Along with the denitrifying bacteria, sometimes the balance must be maintained. It is a Mother Earth that can balance this bacteria. It is not the agrochemicals or synthetic chemicals. We cannot balance them. Okay, there are many other examples, and which causes, just now we had discussed a herbicide, Zytron, has not shown any deleterious effects are not shown by this chemical, but it's on degradation. It is converting into 2,4-dichlorophenol. It causes more degradation when compared to this one. Okay, that is about different how that is affected. Another area is soil respiration. Okay, the application of some fungicide could reduce soil respiration, followed by, because porosity is essential in the soil. The porosity is lost. Why? Because the porosity is lost. Just now, the lips are also told that earthworms will be killed completely by usage of this agrochemicals. Therefore, porosity or soil respiration will be decreased. Okay, there is many case studies are there, which I had given in this one. So soil microflora and soil biotic properties are significantly affected by chemical inputs in the soil. How it is going to, agrochemicals are also going to affect the food. Okay, that is what happens when you add a pesticide to a fruit-giving plant. These pesticides will be residing on the fruit completely. Okay, then it enters even into the pericarp or the endocarp of the inside also it may enter. Or sometimes in cereals, what happens means it will be in the bran. Okay, in the covering, alluron layer, it will be there. It will be residing there. Okay, then it becomes a problem while consuming automatically. Not only human beings, many animals will consume these fruits. Those enter into those birds or insects, then it creates a hazard in that ecosystem, or the life, that is food cycle is lost. Pesticides can be degraded through any mechanism. We can remove them, but we can remove. But how can a plant or another insect or a bird can remove that? We can remove by hydrolysis or redox method or metabolism, or they can be removed. Okay, they have applied many fruits and vegetables at different stages, such as the start of germination. We generally apply these pesticides at the start of germination or blooming stage or stage of fruiting, or also after harvesting. Many times we use these pesticides. Therefore, the residue of the pesticides inside the same fruits may vary. Sometimes every fruit contains some residues of these pesticides. Okay, the extent of the pesticide residues retained on the peel surface may be there, whereas may be absorbed into the flesh of the fruit also. Okay, and the pesticide had appeared higher in the epidermis than that in the sarcocarp or pericarp. In case of vegetable, the concentration appeared higher in the outer surface. That is almost, sometimes they may enter into the flesh or the pericarp or the sarcocarp of the vegetable. Okay, by washing we can remove these pesticides, but there are some certain insecticides such as pyrethroids, due to strong bonding between the fruit and skin and the functional group of the insecticides, even washing cannot remove these pesticides. Okay, continuous upper layer of certain the bran of the grains may be getting this pesticide, and only some extent of pesticides have lipophilic properties, can move into the bran and germ. Okay, that is into the seed. After they may enter into the seed coat and into the core of the grain also sometimes, but very rare. But mainly it resides in the bran of the, that is of the fruit. The sustainable agriculture is we can advise sustainable agriculture is the only remedy for this one, and continuous usage of agrochemicals should be reduced. Okay, that is another. Soil disturbance should be avoided. That is also okay by using the exact, okay, only limited usage of agrochemicals, or organic manures can be used, organic fertilizers can be used instead of inorganic fertilizers. The novel approaches should be there. Must be more research on this one, And continuous application of the pesticide should be avoided. That is also another one. The sustainable method of degradation of harmful agrochemicals or pesticides is very essential. The research must be focused on these areas. Okay, that is my presentation. And I had depended mainly on this main paper. I had depended on this one by impacts of agrochemicals, and on soil microbiology and food quality I depended, and other papers also. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Thank you, the organizers.
Thank you, Dr. Dayanand garu.
Thank you, sir.
I think you have done a very detailed presentation on the problems which are created by agrochemicals, especially pesticides and okay, I'll now speak a little more and then we'll have open discussion. Actually, when we are this webinar is in the context of COP27, which is happening in Egypt. We are organizing this. And this COP27 is the 27th meeting of Conference of Parties on Climate Change. So it began in 1995 in Bonn, Germany, under a UN framework for climate UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, so UNFCCC. If we look at all these 27 meetings, unfortunately, agrochemicals have not come up to discussion at all. In fact, they should have received more, attention, but that has not happened. And why, I think, is still a question. But what we understand, the way international, negotiations or international conventions or all the international activities which are organized, I think this climate change has been a very distinct process, and over the last 10 years, I think it has become more prominent because we are facing a serious crisis arising out of global warming. Now, in the recent 3-4 years, we have seen a lot of disturbance in the nature, and extreme weather events have been recorded. So now I think people started believing in the reports of International Panel on Climate Change, which has been warning about this climate crisis. And more, all these scientific assessments, they are looking at carbon emissions, and carbon emissions which are contributing to greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, and then the global warming arising out of that greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. So I don't think they have looked at the many other aspects which have interrelation with the current status of environment, because one of the principal problems which have been identified earlier, it's not that we are looking at it now, is about the nature and the cycles of nature which have been destroyed. So this natural carbon cycle which has been there, which is working from oceans to forests, soil. So all these, natural resources were involved in this natural carbon cycle. And that's how most of the carbon was found either in the soil or in the oceans or in the forests. So when deforestation started happening and a lot of human interference started happening in the oceans, and of course, soil is also being disturbed. So all these three major natural resources have been interfered with in the last 300 years, not just in the last 10, 15 years. So gradually, I think the human interference has exceeded the carrying capacity of this natural carbon cycle, and then eventually we have seen the load of carbon increasing in atmosphere and not in its natural state, either in the soil or in forests or in the ocean. So this being there, I think what this IPCC reports or the scientific assessment reports have been focusing is on fossil fuel burning. So especially coal has been identified, and emissions coming from coal or fossil fuel usage has been identified as that. But I think the another 2 3 factors which have been there is the destruction of environment, because the carbon cycle, the buildup of carbon cycle involves a lot of biodiversity, as both the speakers mentioned earlier. So either in the soil or in the surface or the on the surface of the soil. So this diversity and the interaction between this diversity, I think that has been playing a major role in this carbon cycle. And this diversity, biodiversity, is being killed by many methods, but one of the major methods is now agrochemicals. So that's how we have now lost at least 70% of the non-human life species. So recent reports, even in the last 15 days, several reports have been released, and including World Wide Fund for Nature, they have released, UNEP has released, many other international organizations have been studying this phenomena, especially the biodiversity. So while the human species, their population is growing now. UN 3 days back has released that human population is increasing to has increased to 8 billion, but it is slowing down, and it might reach 9 billion in the next 15 years and 10 billion in the next 22 years. So it might take 37 years to build another 2 billion. But then the population is growing in unevenly. So it is happening in areas like Africa and Afro-Asian region. So that is again impinging on the species and the species diversity. So there have been studies, which showed that apart from the humans, the wildlife species are lost heavily. That is basically because of deforestation, but also chemicalization of food systems. So because of this, for years and years, I think gradually this biodiversity is lost. Second major stream, which I feel is, as hybridization and chemicalization of agriculture began, eventually there is completely focus on increasing the yield, and then agriculturization as a livelihood and as a income income generating livelihood, and also as a part of the economy, has led to widening of agricultural areas. So unlike 100 years back or in the traditional societies, food was also diverse. Food was not only from crops. So we used to get food from uncultivated areas. We used to get food from forests, which are again not cultivated. So there are many areas which have been contributing to the food basket of human beings. And of course, the interactive food chain between human and non-human species was also a robust mechanism was there. So, but as agriculturization began, and this agriculture started using more and more chemicals, especially fertilizers. It started with fertilizers, and gradually pesticide usage has increased. And now we are in this direction of genetic modification of species, especially seeds and germplasm, and even livestock has begun. So now from hybrids to uh, genetically modified seeds to now gene edited seeds and livestock, we have come to that scenario, and intertwined with this kind of technologies, pesticides or herbicides. So now more and more herbicide tolerant plants or seeds have been introduced, not all over world, but I think that's a direction which modern agriculture is giving. So again, recent studies show that just 15 meat and cattle companies, meat and dairy companies, uh, 15 companies, just 15 companies, they maintain large farms of animals, basically for meat and also for dairy. So these 15 companies together been documented for their carbon emissions, and it said they combinedly exceed at least three big nations like Russia, Britain, and Germany. So the combined emissions of this kind of business model, this kind of food production model is giving leading to carbon emissions. So on one hand, agrochemicals are being used, and on the other hand, this food system is being transformed basically on the back of this agrochemical based production. So these two together are now have led to biodiversity loss, soil diversity loss, and then of course ensured buildup of carbon in the atmosphere than in the soil or than in the forest areas. So most of us think deforestation is only for timber, but deforestation is also because of the spread of agriculture, because the agriculture areas gradually are shifting because of the this loss of fertility. As both the speakers mentioned, these pesticides and fertilizers, they are making soil inert. So over a period, these soils become they can't be used for food production. So fertile in search of fertile soil, I think human societies are deforesting the forest areas, and destroying biodiversity in the name of monoculture systems. So deforestation is not happening just because of timber or use of wood, but is also because of the expansion of agriculture. Now, the other factor which is pushing agriculture into forests is urbanization. So, as urban areas are increasing, the land under agriculture is decreasing, and these agriculture areas are extending into forest areas. So, even the minimal 8%, 9% forest areas are also now getting converted into agriculture areas. So this gradual shift of land use from a natural process to the usage for urban areas, and then the agriculture, and from agriculture towards forest areas. I think this is also impinging on the climate change processes. So again, this is enabled by the technologies which are employed in agriculture. So these technologies now include started with the fertilizers, pesticides, and genetically modified seeds. So overall, I think one is the food transformation is required. When we are discussing in climate change today at Egypt, they are not gone into the depths of the food systems, because even the human species are under threat because of these food systems, as other species have already been wiped out. So when we are discussing climate change, in the last 10 days, there are a number of groups have tried to bring attention to food systems, biodiversity, and the interactive systems of between natural resources, water, forests, soil, and food systems. So I think climate change conference has not yet taken up. There have been some discussions under one stream of negotiations. They said it is Coronavian joint work program on agriculture, and in fact, today or tomorrow, a draft text is supposed to come out of that. Well, so we need to see if they are going to include some of these suggestions which are being made by the civil society for long. But now, of course, forest area conservation, for biodiversity conservation is accepted, but as a program of action, it has not yet come about. And secondly, this industrial agriculture, like I mentioned, this meat and dairy companies, and then the large scale farms, which are completely monoculture, which we are seeing in developed countries. I think those are still not under the radar of this climate change negotiations. So that means they are not under pressure to change. In fact, it is happening the other way, outside climate change, because in Bali, the G20 summit happened. Just yesterday, they finished a 3-day summit where top 20 countries have gathered, and they discussed the food security as one of the major issues. But food security, again, they are looking at from the point of quantity rather than quality. And both the speakers have mentioned how food quality is being compromised because of pesticides and agrochemicals. So I think G20 discussion is happening, but they are looking at more and more inclusion of these same technologies which have contributed to the destruction of natural carbon cycles and natural carrying capacity of soil and other natural resources. So given that, I'm not yet sure whether these food systems will uh, be the focus of national policies at all. Uh, and in fact, there is other pressure which we are seeing because of inflation. In the last 6 months, of course, after the COVID pandemic, cost of living crisis has become a major issue in all the countries across the globe, and food costs have increased. So food access has decreased, and the United Nations has given a report saying that at least 60% of the global population is now facing hunger. And yesterday, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, he said in next 3 years, we are going to face severe famine, and he has identified 5 locations which are already reeling under famine conditions. Now, famine is different from drought. Famine is about access to food. Famine is not about a lack of production or lack of resources for food production. It is more about access to food. So I think these famine conditions have been warned by UN Secretary General, and he says we need urgent decisions on how to increase food security. So this food security has become a global focus issue, but inherent in the security, most of the discussion is on again and again is on quantity, productivity, yield. So how to increase so that this huge population can get food, rather than on the nutrition, the quality and integrity of the food which we are producing. So this can't be separated. The quantity and quality cannot be separated. So that is where I think the discussion should happen on the methods and technologies of food production and also fiber production. So and it's not just food separately. The fiber and food go together. So Indian traditional agriculture systems, they always had this link between food and fiber. In fact, sometimes for fiber is also a very essential requirement for healthy life. So food and fiber go together, but I think increasingly the focus on only food and that too cereals. I think that is again a major problem. Like we have lost our food diversity. Now almost 70% of food is constituted by only three cereals, rice, wheat, and soya bean. So, but we had 600 different crops. So we have lost much of this diversity, and within each crop, again, we had a diverse of varieties, so which responded to the different agroclimatic conditions. So I think this loss of diversity within the agricultural systems which have been developed over centuries, I think even that is a major focus of attention. It should be a major focus of attention when we are discussing food security. So right now, if you look at just three processes at international level, one is this climate change negotiations which are happening as part of COP27, and then G20 summit, which is also trying to increase investments in industrial agriculture. And then third, we are looking at the overall economics which are being influenced by the global trade under WTO. So these three processes appear to be distinct, but I think they are interlinked. So one of the fundamental changes which we can seek is knocking out this ability of this global corporate system to produce chemicals, and that can happen by focusing on fossil fuel, phasing out of fossil fuels. So climate change is discussing mostly coal, but not on oil and gas, because gas is again one of the ingredients for fertilizers, and of course crude oil, petroleum is also a source for number of chemicals, including pesticides, herbicides, and many other products. So I think if we focus on phasing out all the fossil fuels, so the slogan is let fossil fuels remain underground. We should not take them out, and we have to build economies which without these fossil fuels, and we have number of alternative energy systems, including increasing the biomass as part of our energy system. So biomass based energy system is being talked about as a long term vision. So I think given that alone, if we are united in asking fossil fuel phase out by 2030, and next 80 years, if that happens, I think only then our food systems will be, will get improved, and then the population which is dependent on those foods, not only humans, but also the other species, they'll find a life of their own. So ultimately, we have to focus on fossil fuel phase out completely. So I hope we will be able to achieve that in the next 1 or 2 years. Otherwise, I think human existence is under a severe threat, and all IPCC reports tell us that with global warming, even the plant species are going to be impacted. We may not be able to produce food at all because the temperature changes. I think many plants will lose their ability to, multiply or pick up minerals from the soils, or lead to fruits. So the once that kind of changes have come, so we can't even continue life on this earth. So given that, I think it is important that we immediately focus on fossil fuel phase out. So I'll stop here, and if there are any questions we can take, or if the other speakers, if they want to add anything, they can add. Otherwise, I think we can close this seminar. Okay, I think.
Yes, thank you,
also,
sir. Thank you for giving me this opportunity, sir. Thank you so much. And you rightly pointed the recent issues. That is most important. Wonderful.
Thank you. I should thank you because you have taken a lot of pain and you did a lot of work in bringing all that information, some of which was very interesting, especially. So we'll continue the discussions, and we'll hope many more will take up this kind of discussion. So Dilip, you want to say anything?
Nothing much. I think the larger issue of agrochemicals, we discussed the impact, and coming to climate change, I think this is something we need to discuss more, so that our people can understand, especially farming community, consumers, youth, everything needs to understand all these things. Otherwise, then only we can get into local actions based on the global issues. So I would suggest if all the participants in this webinar or those who are viewing this or watching this webinar learn more and try to get kind of comprehensive picture of what is actually happening with agrochemicals and related to climate change. That's all. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you both the speakers and also all others who are participating in this. So we'll close this webinar right now. Thank you.